Hi everyone, it's Paul Bertorelli reporting for AVweb. You will recognize the airplane behind me. It's the Icon A5, and you probably also know that Icon has been at their program for a little over 10 years. In this video, we're going to fly the airplane, but we're also going to talk to Warren Curry about how Icon brings new customers in, how it trains them, including people who have never flown before, and also people who want to transition from land airplanes to seaplanes. In the second video, we'll take a look at the market conditions that Icon is facing. Icon has two major training centers in the U.S., one in California and one on the East Coast at Peter O. Knight Airport in Tampa. Hard to imagine a better setup for this kind of training. Peter O. is right near downtown Tampa in the port's industrial sector. Just make a left turn off runway 22 and you're right over a nice patch of water in Hillsborough Bay. It's a perfect setup for training seaplane pilots, and here's how Icon does it. Okay, so we're here at St. Petersburg at Peter O. Knight Airport. Warren, tell us what the courses are that are available for people coming in. You've got people who are purchasing airplanes, you've got people who are transitioning, and people who want to do a sport seaplane rating.
Yeah, great question, Paul. So the Icon training facility here at Tampa, as well as the one we have in Vacaville, offers three main courses. One is the sport pilot license. Those are for individuals who have not flown before and want to earn their sport pilot license. And then we offer two other courses which are somewhat unique to Icon in some way, and that's the transition from a land-based pilot, so someone that has a single-engine land, to get their Icon certification and their light sport water endorsement. And we also have a course that takes pilots who have their seaplane rating already, and we teach them the difference. It's basically a difference training. It's maybe, you know, reminding them of the things they've learned in their seaplane school, as well as differences with the Icon.
And so if I'm a new Icon purchaser and I've just bought the airplane, I'm coming in here to learn to fly it, how long will that take me?
So a sport pilot license, if someone were to come to Tampa or Vacaville and they really dedicate themselves, I would tell people you're probably looking at 3 weeks. Obviously Mother Nature and just the aptitude and the way they pick it up would definitely make a difference. If they're doing a transition, like a single engine land pilot comes down, that's typically a 4-day course where we do a ground school and 6 flights. And then the shortest course is someone who already has their seaplane rating, and that's a 2-day course where we do a ground school, again, reminders of things they learned previously, differences with the Icon, and then we take them on 3 flights.
And you've got materials here which Icon has developed. Tell me a little bit about what these do.
Yeah, and you know, I'm really proud of what Icon has developed, to be honest with you. So we have 3 main documents. First is the course guide. This includes all the 3 courses we talked about, and it really walks a pilot through what their expectations are when they come to the Flight Training Center here in Tampa or Vacaville. We outline every day, we outline every flight, what we're going to talk about in ground school, things they need to study ahead of time, we'll discuss, and then the particular procedures we'll do in that flight. And again, that's for the sport pilot license, the transition for a land-based pilot, or the seaplane pilot. And then additionally, what we have here is the sport pilot academics, primarily for the sport pilot license, because it goes through weather, it goes through airspace, you know, things that most pilots coming in here already know. And then we have sections just dedicated to the transition courses, you know, how to operate on the water. If you're just a land-based pilot, what does a step taxi mean? What's a plow turn mean? Not only what does it mean and why you use it and what conditions you use it in, but actually how to do it in the Icon itself.
So if I'm, probably for our readers and viewers, the main area of interest is I've already got single engine land, or I've already got ratings. I don't have a seaplane rating. I'm going to come in here and do it in an Icon. How long will that take and what will it cost?
Yeah, so and that is honestly, Paul, 75% of our people that come through here are those exact type of pilots. And I will caveat my answer by saying it really depends on their currency and proficiency. You know, so we'll make the assumption someone's coming in with at least some recent currency and proficiency with flying. So if they come in, it's a 4-day course. We spend the first morning going over a ground school. Again, we talk about particularly the water environment. We'll still discuss our land-based operations, how we land the aircraft on the water, but we're really focused and keen on how we do our water operations, and that's about a 3-hour course. And then we have 6 flights. And those 6 flights, just like every other curriculum, it goes from the basic building blocks of how to fly the aircraft, how to land it on a normal water condition, all the way into how we're going to beach it, how you ramp it, how you get to a dock. And then, as you know, as you're a seaplane pilot, glassy water conditions, more the the challenging type of things you do in a seaplane.
And it's not the only way to do it. You don't have to come here. You've got instructors across the country. How's that program?
Yeah, and again, I'm proud of what we've developed. So really over the last 14 months, we have developed 24 what we call ICON authorized flight instructors. So those are people that we qualify. We make sure that they have the requisite amount of flight instruction hours, and then we train them to not only teach people how to fly the ICON, but also how to do the transition courses from the water-based operations. And those ICON authorized flight instructors are everywhere from Southern California to Northern Washington to Boston down to Miami and all the ways in between. And we did that because really what we're focusing on is the clients who are across the nation right now who may not have the time or ability to come to Tampa or Vacaville. We want to make sure that we're building an infrastructure to support the current clients and future clients. And if I can add one thing, and I know you know this is important, they're there to focus on the current clients because as we all know, sometimes life gets in the way. So you have an ICON A5, you've been flying it, and whether it's a medical condition or just something in life keeps you out of the aircraft for a little bit, I always encourage our clients, find that local ICON authorized flight instructor and get current and proficient before you go out and enjoy your aircraft.
Manufacturer provided training materials aren't anything new. Cessna did it for years, but ICON is different for focusing on the operating envelope the A5 will fly in, specifically low altitude, near obstacles, and, of course, water, lakes, rivers, and bays. In a way, the A5 is a throwback to older stick and rudder airplanes. The panel isn't loaded up with the usual acres of glass display, but is more automotive-like. From minute one, the training focuses on this gadget, the A5's angle of attack indicator. To be accurate, this isn't true angle of attack, but a pressure differential instrument that implies AOA. Note that the indicator pointer is a wing section and the gauge is marked with just 3 angles, green, white, and yellow. The white angle is what's recommended for approaches. And while ICON kind of makes a big deal about the AOA indicator, the training also introduces the idea of flying as an energy management exercise, which of course it is. The training material introduces the idea of sensing airspeed through tactile factors like noise, stick feel, and, looking out the window. With flying increasingly reduced to the abstraction of glass panels, this is a refreshing change. And also knots, the other kind of knots. You are, after all, both in an airplane and a boat, and you're going to have to tie it to a dock one day. The A5 is trailerable, which is one of the original selling points. In under 3 minutes, the wings fold and stow in fixtures designed just for the purpose. The horizontal stabilizer tips are removable to keep the airplane's width in a standard lane. This is the best thought out wing fold design I've seen yet. Unique to the A5 are what ICON calls water wings, otherwise known as sponsons. On the water, you can stand on these for a little fishing or swimming, and for feet dry boarding, it's easy enough to just kneel on them and lever into the cockpit, even if the wing-mounted camera makes your butt look big. For my flight demo, I asked ICON Chief Instructor Janessa Duffy to demonstrate how she introduces a new would-be pilot to the A5. The training sticks strictly to the script, and the script revolves around ICON's extensive purchase contract that includes a detailed operating agreement. This is designed to do 2 things: limit ICON's legal exposure from accidents and alert buyers to specific risks to avoid accidents in the first place. There are 32 items on the list, everything from pumping the bilge to rough water landings to weight and balance calculations. The training will touch every one of those. Okay, so for this exercise, I'm the new guy, I'm getting the demo, so
yep.
What will you tell me?
So, we're aligning with the runway. All our gauges are still good. We're just going to smoothly rotate to full power, maintain our center line, verify our engine instruments. Our airspeed is alive. We are going to rotate about 50-55 knots is what we're looking for. There's 50, 55, we're up. And now we're going to climb up at that white line. Again, that's our BY, our best rate of climb. Once we're out of usable runway, I will go gear up. Gear's coming up in transit. And now it will show gear up and locked, which will kind of demonstrate as on the water.
Final, 22, Peter 9.
Is the training doctrine to focus on the AOA, not the airspeed?
Yes. All of our training, that's a primary instrument.
A pile of money was spent on the A5's aerodynamics, and it shows. If you've ever flown a Bonanza, you'll remember how naturally balanced the control forces feel. Well, the Icon is close to that, with little of the twitchy lightness so many light sport airplanes have. It takes only a small stab of trim to keep it on speed. In pitch, a display stick results in a fugoid that damps in 2 cycles or less, and it settles nicely on the trimmed airspeed after power changes. I did some rudder coordination exercises and found so little adverse yaw that hardly any rudder is needed. Very little adverse yaw. If I make rolls without any rudder, I'm not seeing a lot of adverse yaw.
Not a lot of adverse yaw.
When you bring a new student in here, are you starting them on the rudder right away?
SPL student, yeah, of course, yeah, you want to make sure that they're coordinated in turns and crosswind takeoff and landings, but this aircraft, you need very little rudder. The only time I really use the rudder is crosswind takeoff and landings, you know, turns over, I'd say 30 to 45 degree banks of turn, and maneuvering on the water. One, right, it's a pusher aircraft, so we have a little less turning tendencies, and also the rudder is canted about 1 degree to the right already, so you just don't need a ton of rudder in this airplane.
The rudder or the vertical fin?
The rudder.
Rudder, okay. Standard gross weight for a light sport seaplane is 1,430 pounds. That allows for the weight of the floats of the boat. But the A5 is wavered to 1,510 pounds. The additional weight allows for a ballistic parachute and also for the higher weight of the airplane's split incident stall resistant wing. The top of the wing is a forest of vortex generators, and these keep the air stuck to the wing, so roll control is positive right into the stall buffet.
And that's a full stall. You might, if you keep holding it, you'll get a little bit of a buffet. You can kind of feel it.
The buffet and
right?
a little bit of nose through.
So let's lower the nose, and then recover. There you go.
By habit, I'd use rudder to hold the wings level, but ailerons will do that in the A5. That's good because pilots get sloppy and rely on roll during the stall. Not so good because it can make for lazy feet. Like many LSAs, the A5 has a gentle stall with a pronounced parachute mode with slight pitch oscillation. It's supposed to be all but impossible to spin, but from 1,000 feet, I didn't feel like trying. And you're not supposed to do any of this stuff anyway. Item 20 in the operating agreement. On the water, the A5 comes into its own, and so does Icon's emphasis on the angle of attack indicator. I found after a couple of passes, after I'd got used to the AOA and used it to set the sight picture, I didn't need to refer to it or the airspeed indicator, just as Icon's training material suggests. And by the way, with the windows out, the airplane is surprisingly quiet with hardly any objectionable wind, but plenty of tactile feel for speed changes. That's due in part to these air deflectors. You can hang your elbow out the window like a 1950s street greaser. Fast on-the-step taxi terms are part of the fun of seaplanes. Perhaps because of the A5's water wings, it resists roll in these maneuvers, meaning the chance of inadvertently dipping a wingtip is minimal, so the turn doesn't require much opposite aileron. Because of its higher weight and higher power loading, the A5 isn't as fast off the water as other amphibs and LSA seaplanes. Here's a comparison with the Progressive Aerodyne 100 horsepower Sea Ray Sport. And here's how that higher power loading translates into the water run for takeoff. The A5 needs 840 feet compared to 550 feet for the Sea Ray. Initial rate of climb is comparable between the two at about 600 feet per minute. The Sea Ray Elite with a 115 horsepower turbocharged Rotax 914 does a lot better at 950 feet per minute. It also blasts off the water in just 430 feet. Not many light sport airplanes are load haulers, least of all the amphibians. On a gross weight of 1,510 pounds, the A5's useful load is 430 pounds. Two 180-pound people will have payload left for about 11 gallons of gas. That's okay for a 2-hour toot around the lake with VFR reserves. But two 200-pounders better make it a half hour. The Sea Ray does a little better at 490 pounds useful load. The A5 wasn't intended to be fast nor a cross-country machine, and it's neither. Cruise speed is about 85 knots on 4.5 gallons. With reserve and still air, it'll fly a little over 300 miles. Miami to Jacksonville, for instance, in 3.5 hours. Dry runway landings are nothing special, but again, the AOA indicator, both its function and placement at the top of the panel, really helps nail the visual pitch attitude for the approach, what we used to call flying the wing. That's how an airplane like this should be flown, and the A5 has the tools to do it. When Icon came out of the ground, it proposed a training program to take unique advantage of the airplane's safety features. So has it delivered. As of fall 2019, the A5 has been involved in at least 6 accidents, 2 of them fatal. By any measure, that's not a great start. With fleet hours totaling 14,000 and a little over 100 airframes out there, the numbers are too small to calculate a fair accident rate. I covered how small numbers distort accident rate calculations in this video. There's a link to it down in the summary section. Just as we did with the Cirrus line, we'll have to wait until 300 or 400 airframes are out there to judge the airplane's safety record fairly. One of the fatals was the high-profile Roy Halladay crash in Florida. No final cause on that one yet. The first fatal involved a factory pilot who turned into this cove off Lake Berryessa in California and collided with rising terrain. This is just the sort of trap amphibian pilots have to learn to avoid because they're frequently operating at low altitudes near terrain and obstacles, not airports with protected approach paths cleared of obstruction. The Progressive Aerodyne Sea Ray has many more airframes in service than Icon, and the accident record shows similar crashes. At least one Icon accident appears to be that common seaplane gotcha of landing on water with the wheels down. This never turns out well, and anyone who flies seaplanes will tell you it goes with the territory. A certain number of seaplane drivers will eventually become U-boat commanders. After more fleet experience, Icon may very well massage its training to avoid this kind of accident. That's exactly what Cirrus did, but it took more than a decade. We'll look at Icon's record again in a few years. Meanwhile, you can find a full report on Icon in the October 2019 issue of Aviation Consumer. And before I go, one more thing. Let's have a look at where Icon as a company fits into the overall market. Icon's original idea was to appeal to potential owners outside traditional aviation markets, such as motor and extreme sports. The original business model envisioned high volume, so the company built 2 factories to deliver on that, one in Mexico and one in California. But the airplane was long in gestation, and if you've been following the news lately, you've read that the company has had its ups and downs. Just as Icon produced its 100th airplane this summer, it announced a significant reorganization and downsizing. At one point, it had an order book extending to many hundreds of aircraft, but it's now planning to produce just 4 or 5 airplanes a month. So what happened? One factor is price escalation. When originally introduced, the A5 carried a sticker price of $139,000. Now the base price is $385,000. Here's Icon's president, Thomas Wieners.
So obviously it has been hurting, right? And this was the risk that the company took when we came out early with price tags at 139, 259, 139, 189, 259, 389. So at that point in time, the data points were extremely weak around how much does it really cost to produce that airplane. What does it really take to bring it into serial production? And the company has been very, very optimistic and bullish that this could be done cheaper. Unfortunately, the airplane was not necessarily designed for manufacturability, while the focus was strongly on the flight characteristics and the aesthetics of the airplane. So now the deposit holder list substantially looking different than it looked before. And this is where, I would put this under the same envelope of reality check right now. Let's not talk so much about deposits here. at this point in time. Yes, there's a database of folks with interest. There's a database of deposit holders. But likewise important are net new customers to us that are actually sometimes even quicker in making a decision because they're also not undergoing that psychological effect, I would call it, where you would saying like today, even if I have the money, I was told years ago it was cheaper, and now it's so expensive. This is not right. I don't want to pay this anymore.
Icon's original factory investment was scaled for much larger numbers, but can it now downshift to something less? Here's Thomas Wieners again.
I actually think we can, and that's the reorg that we have just been initiating. There's various factors. There's the facilities themselves, and both our facilities have a capacity of around 1,000 aircraft a year. Now, this is space, and space translates into lease or rent, and there's ways of mitigating this. We're considering to sublease space. We are considering to take on a couple of other projects that will require space and pay for themselves. So that's a fairly easy exercise, I'd say. The other one is equipment tooling, which is also highly capital intensive. And this has been, and I think I said that in the call the last time, we are having tooling to support like these 250 units a year. So the good news here is scaling up, which we know that's a flexibility we have now for capital investment wise, is to a level of 250 doable. We're not needing more cash. That is good news. At the same time, obviously, this is capital that has been expensed in the past, and this is not fully utilized right now.
And Wieners believes the original strategy to target people new to aviation was the correct one and will work, but it will also take time to find those buyers and build that market. You can find the full interview with Thomas Wieners in the October 2019 issue of Aviation Consumer Magazine, along with a report on the airplane. For AVweb, I'm Paul Bertorelli reporting. Thanks for watching.